workshop 2.
Fraud is global. Fraud is crime. Every second, somewhere in the world, a new victim is hurt. Are we losing the battle? We are entering unprecedented times where artificial intelligence makes it more and more difficult to differentiate false from true. The fight against fraud is fought everywhere. On voice, SMS, RCS, messaging, email, and on internet. The fraudsters are smart and ruthless. Countries and networks are setting up individual and highly necessary digital shields to protect their citizens from the millions of attacks. It's a whack-a-mole game. The fraudsters change the channel or target another country. Almost always the fraudster go free. Cooperation is the only way forward. But we must do more than talk. Action is key. It's time to act. Let's take action together.
Welcome everybody to this session on building trust and combating fraud in the internet ecosystem. My name is Johannes Wallesrød. I'm a senior legal advisor at Norwegian Communications Authority. I'm also chairing the National Expert Group Against Digital Fraud, also chairing the Global Informal Regulatory Anti-Fraud Forum. We also have today an online moderator, Frode Sørensen, my good colleague. He is online and taking in questions from online. So, welcome again, everybody. The goal of today is of this session is to not only talk, but also to look at what we are doing and what can we do in operational terms, regulatory and technical, to reduce fraud. We should aim at not just identifying the vulnerabilities, but also to use our collective intelligence to identify potential mitigating measures. So in order to do so, you need a good team, a team that have different angles to the problem. So today at the stage we have a powerhouse of fraud fighters. These are people who are working on reducing the problem of fraud from very different angles. We have on my right side here, Rens Grimm. He's an anti-scam specialist from GASA, the Global Anti-Scam Alliance. We have Camilla Sharma, Director of Market and Services Department of Norwegian Communications Authority. We have Rika Puttonen, Program Manager of UNODC, UN Office of Drugs and Crime. We have Emily Taylor, co-founder of GSE and the Global Signal Exchange. She will be accompanied by Lucian Taylor on the presentation. We're also very happy to have Rima Amin, Security Policy Manager, Community Defense at Meta. Also, Birgitte Engebretsen, Managing Director of Telenor Norway. Last but not least, we also have Nico Caballero, Chair of the GAC, the Governmental Advisory Committee to ICANN. So it's a fantastic lineup. I'm looking forward to hearing your presentations. So let's jump right into it. The first speaker can take the podium now. He is Rens Grimm. He is an anti-scam specialist, and they have a lot of information on the global picture of fraud. So tell me, Rens, how is the global picture like?
Yeah, welcome everybody. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. My name is Rens. As Johannes said, I work for the Global Anti-Scam Alliance, and I just wanted to show you that, and promise you no artificial intelligence was used to make this presentation, but I'll leave it up to you at the end of the session. So, Global Anti-Scam Alliance. So who are we? We are a non-profit organization. What we try to do and we aim is get all the stakeholders together that are involved in fighting crime. So we do that by exchanging knowledge. We do that by sharing the best solutions there are on the market to fight fraud. Our mission is very simple. We protect consumers worldwide from scams. if the room was the world today, then 25% of you have literally been a victim, not confronted with scam, but have been a victim of scam. 25%, imagine that, of the worldwide connected population. That's quite a lot. What we've done is we've tried to extrapolate on the basis of a worldwide survey that we do under 60,000 people, and we have guesstimated that the total volume of losses is estimated to be $1 trillion. I'm from the Netherlands, and that's more or less the GDP from my country. In most countries, crime, online scamming, online fraud is either the first or the second most reported crime. I've highlighted England with 38%. If you can imagine that only 2.5% of those behind the scenes, the fraudsters and the online scammers are actually prosecuted. 2.5% is actually good, because worldwide it is estimated it's 0.05%. So the English are doing a pretty good job with the 50-fold of that number. But still, imagine 2.5% is a desperately low number. I've put down some highlights from a survey that we've done in 2024. You see that 67% of world citizens believe that they have the skills to recognize a scam. At first sight, you'd say that's pretty good. You know, that's 2 out of 3 people are capable of seeing a scam and possibly being protected against the scam they'll be confronted with. However, re-victimization is quite a problem. On the basis of the same survey, we've seen in many countries that victims are not only victimized twice, but in some cases 3 times. So the number is maybe a good number, but if you look behind the scenes, it's still troubling. Phone calls and text messages are still the most popular media to scam. Almost half of the world encounters a scam once a week. Globally, 31% are uncertain whether AI was used to scam. Shopping scams are the most frequently encountered scams, followed by investment scams and identity theft. Many victims are caught out by reacting quickly to attractive offers. Either it's too good to be true, or they don't have the knowledge to judge if they are doing the right thing in making a purchase of the service delivered. 74% concluded that they were the victim of the scam themselves. That is a rather high number. It's also culturally determined. If you go to countries like, say, for the Philippines, it's more a family thing together, that people together say, hey, guy, hey, best friend, you've been a victim of a scam. Bank transfers and e-wallet are the dominant scam payment method. Globally, only 4% are capable of getting a full refund, only 4%. The last one, and I've saved that one for last, is that 7% of people globally admit they would be taking part in a money mule. They would be asked the question, if I give you $20,000, you can keep $1,000. And 7% say, well, I think that's a pretty good idea. I'll do that. Even 50% of the 7% say, why should I give back $1,000? I'm going to keep the money at all. Looking here at the audience, I would like to, of course, statistically, 7% could be here. Of course, you're not the piece of people, but if you are, I'd like to meet you at the bar later on, and we can discuss. Scamming is going back for 3,000 years. In old Egypt, it was good to favor the gods to mummify a pet animal. 70 million animals have been mummified. In recent research in England, they've, of the sarcophagus that were still there, they noticed that almost 33%, 1 in 3, was fake. So we've been scamming, and we have been scammed for about 3,000 years. This is an interesting one. This is a Japanese lady, 65 years old, who actually paid 35,000 euros to get her lover back from space because he needed a rocket. This sounds incredible, but it's happened. It's true. 28 seconds. My ex-wife is a yoga teacher, and she said to me, Rens, don't you worry. It's the warmth of the heart that was conquering the coldness of the brain. Guess who's the next victim? these are not nice people. This boy took his life after he was victimized, or he was threatened to nude pictures to be exposed. He killed himself, and after the deed, they concentrated on the father. They said to the father, we're going to ruin the legacy of your child. So we're not dealing with nice people, we're dealing with the scum of the earth, so be aware. What can we do? The floor is for Lucian and Emily, because we have to be practical. We've been talking about collaboration for ages. It's now time for action. It's now time that the registry, the registrars, the telcos, the banks, the social media companies come together, share their knowledge together, so we as a whole, as a population, are better capable of fighting online scam and online fraud. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Rens. In fact, very disturbing numbers. The magnitude is just mind-blowing. So how do authorities react to this? So the next speaker is Camilla Sharma. She's the Director of Marketing and Service Department Encom. So tell us, Camilla, how do the fight look like from one of the many regulators out there? The floor is yours, Camilla.
Thank you, Johannes. It is a true privilege for me to be here today, and I would like to thank the whole IGF team for the invitation. And yes, I truly concur with the reflection from Rens. The problem of fraud is truly global and is truly massive. And remember, the consequences are not just monetary. The emotional consequences can be even worse and sometimes lethal. And this was not bad enough. Fraud also reduces the level of trust in digital technologies. This reduction of trust constitutes a threat not only to the constructive digitalization of the societies, but also a threat to the economic growth and our democratic processes. Trust is a fragile quality. It takes a time to build up and no time to tear down. First, some just quick points from where I come from. The Norwegian Communications Authority, or Nkom as we called it here, is a regulator for postal and electronic communication in Norway. Our responsibilities stretches from security and resilience and resource management to market, regulation and supervision. We are also given the regulatory task with regards to both the European AI Act and the Act on Digital Services. The picture shows our head office in Lillesand in the southern part of Norway. We also have offices other places in Norway. In total, we are 170 employees. A key focus for Nkom is working for safer digital services, including safer internet-based platforms and services. So we are again very pleased to be here in this very relevant session. Just briefly, the trends that Rens showed us is of course happening in Norway too. There is no doubt about that. Almost all Norwegians have been exposed to fraud attempts, and 1 out of 4 have lost money to fraud. The financial losses are huge. In total, Norwegian citizens lose around 100 million euros a year to fraud. With a population of 5.6 million people, this means approximately 18 euros per citizen. The banks stops around 256 million euros from being lost to fraud. So we have all heard about the call for action. Then I'm happy to say that Norway can tick that box. We can always do more, there is no doubt about that. But at the same time, we are doing a lot. For example, in 2023, we formed together with the National Financial Police, the National Expert Group Against Digital Fraud. This picture is from the first meeting. Today, the group has participation from several public and private stakeholders, including mobile operators, the CRDB, authorities, police, bank sector, and others. And we are very happy to have 3 mobile network operators, Telenor, Telia, Ice Tele, on board. They are providing crucial and constructive contributions in the collaboration. But it is not just collaborations and discussions. The group also conducts vulnerability assessments and finds mitigating operational measures. This is, for example, one picture here. This is a table is from the result of the digital anti-spoofing roaming shield that entered into force 19th November 2024 as one of the first in the world. This shield is the reason why no practical Norwegian mobile number can be spoofed from abroad. The trust in mobile numbers was low some years ago due to a lot of spoofing, but now it is almost restored. A fun fact of this slide, as you may have noticed, that you can see that the fraudsters take ordinary Christmas breaks and they also take a well-deserved weekends off. So they are not on duty all the time. But it is not a full or total shield. This is a very simplified illustration of some of the blocking measures that protects Norway. As you can see, it's missing a chunk, and there are dotted lines breaking through. But again, we are blocking almost all spoofing in Norwegian numbers, but we are not blocking foreign spoofing numbers. We are blocking a lot of SMS, but not all. There is a lot of blocking of fraudulent URLs, but a lot goes through, as you can see. And on the OTTs and the internet-based services, we do not know how much is blocked or how much is passed through. That is why we are expanding our initiatives towards internet-based services. It does not matter for the end user where he or she gets defrauded. We need to protect them on all channels. But how do we begin with difficult endure? The answer, we believe, is to reuse the multi-stakeholder working methods that have produced results of both voice and SMS. We need to be collaborative, operational, and pragmatic. Why pragmatic, you may ask? Well, we will never get rid of fraud. The world is far too complex. Crime will always be there, and AI will make it difficult or probably impossible to differentiate fake representatives for true. So, I think it stopped working, Johannes?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Lastly, I want to mention the importance of teamwork. One collaborative project that we find very interesting, that is the Global Informal Regulatory Anti-Fraud Forum, or GIRAFFE as we called it. The group is chaired by ANCOM, and 40 countries from all regions of the world have participated in meetings. The goal is to compare best practices and create harmonizing measures in the global fight against digital-enabled fraud. If you're a regulator, please consider to join GIRAFFE. With these concrete operational remarks, I will close my intervention, and I look forward to the rest of this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Camilla. It's good to see that some mitigating measures are indeed working and protecting the citizens at every day. That's very good. So we will move on. Let's kick it up a notch. We will go over to the UNODC. So Rika, you can take the stage. So my question to UNODC and Rika is, what can you tell us about the international legal framework addressing fraud as a form of an organized crime? Very happy to have you here, and good luck.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. As we saw in Ren's presentation, fraud is really as old as humankind. But in this post-truth era, supercharged by technology, artificial intelligence, deepfakes, and so forth, fraud is not only surviving, but it is absolutely thriving. It is evolving in terms of speed, scope, and scale, and it is absolutely exploding in that regard. Also, fraud really affects every one of us. If I asked you if there's anybody in the room who was never targeted for fraud, I don't imagine many hands going up. I think all of us are constantly targeted by fraudsters in various ways and forms. So we don't fall for fraud. That terminology we should leave aside. We are targeted for fraud. Whom are we targeted by? We are targeted by organized criminal groups. There is a UN Convention against transnational organized crime, which is almost universally adhered to with 193 parties to the convention. So that is a very, very broadly adhered to convention of the UN. The idea behind the convention is simply to promote cooperation. Because clearly, when it comes to fraud, There is nothing one single country can do in isolation, but we need a concerted effort by every single state and all the different players. Like this morning we heard about the multi-stakeholder approach, the private sector, civil society, academia, and all the players. We need everybody around the table. How does the Organized Crime Convention, which is already 20 plus years old, has it really withstood the test of time in terms of applying to fraud as it manifests itself in today's world? I'm very glad to say that it has, because the drafters, meaning all the member states of the UN, actually drafted the convention to apply to all serious crime. And serious crime, if I again asked you as the audience, what does serious crime actually mean? I would probably get as many answers as we have people in the audience. So drafters had to come up with a threshold. Any offense that in your domestic legal system is punishable by 4 years or more of imprisonment, the maximum penalty 4 years or more, is serious. I'm also very sad to say that fraud, despite the severe consequences that we heard about, is not a serious crime in all countries. So there is homework for all of us to do. The consequences are severe and the nature of fraud keeps on evolving, so does the international legal framework. And there was just the new UN Convention Against Cybercrime that was adopted recently, actually at Christmas last year. And that convention now kind of takes the whole fraud debate also to another level and includes also manipulation of electronic data and ICT systems. So that manipulation is now also covered, not only the traditional forms of fraud through deception. But that convention, which will open for signature in October this year, that's when the signing ceremony takes place, that convention also builds upon the Budapest Convention, for those of you who may know the Budapest Convention already, and adds, proposed by Singapore, which is a leading country in the world when it comes to combating fraud, proposed by Singapore, one more type of a fraud through more kind of traditional deception. This is how fraud is often carried out. So that convention, again, will mean a bit of homework for all of us, for countries, to continue criminalizing fraud in a way that actually reflects the reality in today's world. So I was very punctual today. I would just like to finish with a little announcement to say that UNODC and Interpol will host a global fraud summit in March 2026 in Vienna, and we hope to see many of you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Rika. Always a pleasure to hear you and your insightful comments. So it's good to see that there are exciting regulatory measures on the pipeline, and looking forward to signing procedures in October. So let's go to the next one. Please stay up, Emily. We are now going to hear from Emily and Lucien Taylor. They're co-founders of GEC, the Global Signal Exchange. I first learned of GEC this winter, and it was quite refreshing to see the operational aspect of the GEC. So with no further ado, I will give the floor to you both.
Could we have our slides? I think we've got ICANN slides, which I'm happy to have a go at, but it's for the Global Signal Exchange.
Sorry for this little hiccup. So while we are here now, those of you online, you can post questions in the chat field, and Frode will arrange which one will be presented later on. So now, Lucien and Emily.
Johannes, thank you so much for the floor and for inviting us here to present the Global Signal Exchange. My name's Emily Taylor and I'm joined by Lucien, and the more observant will have noticed that we have the same surname, and yes, we are married. So Rens has given you a very detailed overview of the scale of scams and fraud and cybercrime generally, so I'm not going to dwell on this slide. Instead, I want to think about, the way that that cybercrime and fraud and scams can be disrupted, and the journey that a scam will take from building infrastructure, whether that's establishing a company, a website, a domain, establishing a false identity, using and abusing the services of platforms and of other services, engaging with the victim. So they will be relying on platforms, they will be relying on internet service providers, telephone companies, and it's only at the very last second when they persuade a victim to part with their money that it becomes obvious that there is a fraudulent payment there. So all of that happens prior to the payment, and all of those services are used and abused. Now, the current status has been that there can be quite advanced sharing of information within each of those industry verticals, perhaps nationally, but there's almost nothing that takes information across those different sectors and shares that information internationally. The scammers work internationally, they share information, and to fight it effectively, so do we need to do. So the Global Signal Exchange is really a clearinghouse. It's not a takedown service. It's about enabling those different services along the fraud attack chain to share intelligence with one another in real time to combat fraud and scams. And it was announced last October. So it was set up, the Global Signal Exchange is a non-profit, and it was set up in partnership with the Global Anti-Scam Alliance, bringing together their amazing international scam fighting network, and with the support of Google, which committed to sharing threat signals from right across its business services for the benefit of scam fighters. At the session in London, which Johannes was talking about, the Global Signal Exchange was called out by two ministers, the Home Office Minister, the Anti-Fraud Minister, and the DCIT Minister, who I believe is here. And we're already getting many partners onboarded. And so the latest is that we have over 160 organisations either joined up or in the onboarding channel, including 4 of the big tech who are committed to sharing those data. And we also, of course, work across the non-profit sector with fellow civil society organisations. So truly this is a multi-stakeholder voluntary initiative. So now I will hand over to Lucien.
Thank you, Emily. I'm going to do a full tech demo. I had 3 minutes, and now Emily took 12 seconds of that. So my job, I've built this Global Signal Exchange not overnight. It's happened over 20 years. We've been developing information exchange systems for 20 years, my team in Oxford Information Labs. Our job is to make a difference, both pursue and prevent crime. So on the pursue, we've got a new acronym, the QUIC factor. We're developing systems that support quantity, immediacy, and the quality of threat signals exchanged. In terms of the quantity, we're now going into the actual Global Signal Exchange. Every day we do an audit of new signals. We started with 40 million threat signals. When you think the British police advertise that they're getting 30,000 threat signals from consumers every month, we're getting 1 million a day. And I don't think we're seeing half of it, folks. That's the problem out there. But we're also interested in what we call, when we share signals, uplift and overlap. And we're going to go steampunk here. So
uplift. When all parties share signals and thereby find new information, we observe uplift.
and
Overlap. When all parties share signals and simultaneously detect the same signal, we increase confidence.
And so what we're now looking at is also the immediacy of the signals. We've got the time to live of signals, and we're getting signals in 40 seconds. And you can see that the average time to live of signals is basically up to 4 days. So we all have a job here to try and reduce that time lag. Quality, you have the provider score of the threat signal provider, but also the quality of each signal. And the provider themselves can give a quality score, a confidence rating, and also the people receiving the signal can give a feedback. And we're missing feedback from this whole game between us all, and that's what we're trying to do. Another part of our job is to develop league tables. We have registry league tables, who's the best, who's the worst. Here you can see a huge percentage of the bottom registries have their stock is toxic. Registrars, those with over 50,000 domain names, we say that they're actually big players. You're looking at large percentages of stock at the bottom that are toxic. Finally, we have a number of pilots. We're working with advertisers, registries, registrars, ASN, block providers, big tech, marketing providers, and we have a new public sector service for police and law enforcement, which is basically an investigations platform where they can look signal by signal at various metrics in there. Thank you very much. Finally, the impact, we all need to change the game. We need to do cross-sectorial international signal sharing and make things quicker and reduce the cost of threat intelligence for the small players. Thank you for the extra 10 seconds.
No. Thank you, Lucien. And yes, it's so refreshing to see. This is data sharing in practice. We're talking a lot about data sharing. We're doing it. We're talking about real time. You're doing it. We're talking about scale. So you're doing it. So it's very impressive, the work that you have carried out and are doing. What you forgot was to say that .no, the Norwegian top level, is on the top of that list. But so I said it now. So in a panel on fraud fighting, we need to have social media, and I'm very happy to say that Meta could join this session. We have all seen fake profiles, fake stores, and other fraudulent activity on social media. So Rima, tell us the work you are doing on Meta against fraud.
Sure, happy to, and thank you for having us here today. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about where fraud sits sort of within our team. So my teams focus on tackling adversarial threats. Those are the threat actors who are persistent in nature, often have resourcing behind them, and have a strategic goal in mind. So those threats tend to typically manifest as foreign influence operations, cyber espionage, hacking, and frauds and scams. The reason frauds and scams falls within this subset is because they are some of the most aggressive and agile of actors sort of out there. They also have a huge amount of infrastructure underpinning them as well. Emily's spoken a little bit about the attack chain. I'm going to add a little bit more sort of detail because this really is the anchor behind a lot of the way in which Meta is thinking about this problem as well. We took a step back and identified what are all the different tactics that these operations are, what are they doing? And then we categorized them in terms of the sequencing within which they happened. And essentially, we came up with this sort of attack chain. It starts off with the building of infrastructure, and that's where people and tools are essentially being organized to conduct scams. It's important to say that at this point, harm is already happening. You may have heard about people being tricked into sort of job scams and being forced into scam centers where they are essentially forced to conduct these scams. The next stage is around preparing digital assets. So when you have the people and the equipment, you're then creating your online identities. The scammer moves on to engage the victim. That can be through a post, an ad, a message. It's that first point of contact where they're engaging. They then move on to execute, which is where the financial transaction takes place. and then cleanup, which is when the actor is trying to conceal their activity to avoid being detected. Can involve things like money laundering. In terms of the attack chain, a couple of things that we observe. One is for us as Meta, we have sort of the most visibility and therefore the most opportunity to really intervene at the engage stage, where the victim is being contacted by a scammer, and the prepare digital asset stage. We're also conscious that there are others working to counter frauds and scams that may have more visibility into other parts. So law enforcement may have more information on the criminal groups that are building up the infrastructure, or banks may have more information at the execute stage where the financial transaction is taking place. So for us, we're really focused on what can we do within the spaces we have visibility, and then what can we do to support others who may have visibility in other sort of phases. And then the other thing that we're thinking about a lot is how do we push this as far left as possible? Because the further left you put in your interventions, the more chance you have at stopping this at scale. How do I move this on? Okay, so I'm going to try and give an overview of our the pieces of our strategy to tackle frauds and scams. The first is actually building up our product defenses to make them as sort of resilient as possible to scammers who may try to abuse them. Of course, if we know that somebody is a scammer, we'll take them sort of down off a platform. But there may be times where we don't have enough signal, and so putting in frictions and warnings and things like that are incredibly important. We're also thinking about how can we leverage new technologies to counter frauds and scams. So you may have heard that public figures' images are being sort of misused to trick people into scams. So we launched sort of use of facial recognition technology to understand if a public figure's face is being misused, and then if we have some signal to accompany that, we're able to pull it down. That has helped us to be able to tackle that particular problem, and we're constantly thinking, how do we utilize sort of technology in that way? The second area is empowering users. So how do we encourage people to, or equip people in the best way possible to be as cyber resilient as possible? So that includes suites of tools, things like two-factor authentication, making sure that they have everything they need to be cyber secure on our platforms, but also on other platforms across the internet as well. The third piece is disrupting scammers. So here I'm talking about pulling out these criminal networks that I was talking about before. We have investigators who are able to do that, pull those networks out, share that intelligence with others who are tackling the problem, and then be able to use that intelligence to rebuild our product defenses to make them stronger to prevent things in the first place. And then the fourth pillar, and this is really important and goes back to the attack chain as well, is how can we collaborate across society, leveraging organizations like the GSC, who is facilitating sort of signal exchange, building up sort of other pilot programs, working with others on sort of campaigns to help inform people around how to tackle frauds and scams. Okay, I'm out of minutes, so I will stop there, but really looking forward to the rest of the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Rima, and we will also come back to your interventions in the panel discussion that we will have in not many minutes. But of course, another important part of the global fraud fighting team, this powerhouse of resourceful people and businesses, is the mobile operators. So what are they doing and how are they doing it? To give you an example, we are very happy to have Birgitte Engebretsen, Managing Director of Telenor Norway, on the stage. So tell us, Birgitte, what is your insights on this?
Thank you, Johannes. Telenor is a global company currently operating both in the Asian markets but also in the Nordics, with more than 200 million customers. We have connected both people and societies safely for over 170 years. And in Norway, we have close to 3 million customers. The majority of the data traffic in Norway is going through our networks and our services. We are therefore in a unique position to look into what kind of problems do we have related to fraud and digital crime, which is targeted towards the Norwegian society. In Telenor Norway, we have one of the leading security teams in Norway with the expertise to combat advanced threat actors as well as criminal groups. That means that if you are a Telenor customer, you have some of the best security experts on your team at all time. Our ambition is to be the safety net for the Norwegian customers and society at large. Since we are digitizing services to make our life easy, and both in our private lives but also in our work lives, this is fantastic. However, that increases the push from criminal actors from physical space to the digital space. Telenor is experiencing that customers and the public are more concerned about the security in their digital lives now, much more than before. And it's a high demand for both information but also security advices and assistance in protecting against fraud and threat actors. There. All of Telenor's both mobile and broadband customers will get their subscriptions with fraud filters integrated into those subscriptions. In addition to that, we offer extra services in order to secure both private customers but also the business customers with security in their digital life or work life. In addition to a yearly publication, which is called the Annual Digital Security Report, and combined with an open threat assessment, we also publish a quarterly security pulse for the security situation in the Norwegian society. In 2024, we could see that we blocked more than 2,200 million attempts of fraud and digital crimes towards our customers in Norway. That's equivalent, or that's similar to 2 attempts of digital crime each day towards our customers. This is a huge number, and it shows that we need to take this threat seriously, and it's not a local threat, it's a global game for these actors. Although we are taking many steps to stop digital crime and fraud towards our customers and the society as a whole, there's still jobs to be done in order to combat this together. And to effectively combat digital crime, it's crucial for both businesses, government agencies and law enforcement to collaborate closely. The collective effort can lead to a more robust defense against cyber threats. Organizations must prioritize investments in advanced cybersecurity capabilities. By adopting cutting-edge technologies and proactive strategies, businesses can better protect both themselves but also their customers and the society at large. Quality and security must be given a higher weight in tender processes. It's crucial that public sector creates a market for security and robust services and use their purchasing power in order to support that. By doing that, we can keep the public safer, but also create the market for security services. Effective laws and regulations related to cybercrime can create a safer digital environment. Legislation can stop criminal activities. In this context, effective also implies clear. Let me give you one example. How do we balance customers' need for data privacy protection and secure communication channels with the need to share data between relevant actors, such as banks and telcos, in order to fight digital crime? Dilemmas such as this must definitely be discussed in a collaborative context. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Birgitte, for those insightful comments, and I totally agree with the multi-stakeholder comment you made. And also those operational remarks on the purchasing power and the clarity of law. Least but not least, when I discussed with my co-moderator Frode, who is online now, we needed the domain name market industry or regulations on board. So we have fact finders, we have regulators, UN operators, social media, GSE Hub. So we started at the top, the chair of the global governmental advisory committee to ICANN, and he answered, I think, within a couple of minutes. So very happy to have you here, Nico. We want to hear about the issue of phishing that remains a dominant form of DNS abuse, often used in exploiting domain registration loopholes. What specific measures is ICANN doing, advocating for, to enhance register and registrar accountability? So, floor is yours.
Thank you, Johannes. Can you hear me? Because I can't hear myself here. So if we're good. So thank you. My name is Nico Caballero, and I'm the GAC chair, the Governmental Advisory Committee to ICANN. And I assume everybody knows what ICANN is. I was surprised that, I had to explain a little while ago what ICANN is. But broadly speaking, ICANN deals with domain names and let's say the translation between those names and IP address, IPv4 or IPv6 addresses. So let's take a quick look, and I only have 5.5 minutes. The DNS abuse landscape, as we understand it within ICANN, right? There are 5 main, I would say the top 5 DNS abuse types, right? The first one being phishing, which makes up more than 90%, according to some numbers is 95 or 96% of the cases. As per NetBeacon Institute, and there are some other sources as well. And then malware, botnets, farming, and spam, for the remaining percentage. Spam when used as a delivery mechanism for the other 4, right? And a huge impact. I won't get into the details. It's been already explained. But broadly speaking, we're talking about a 12 billion, impact, in terms of annual losses. And these are numbers coming from the Internet Society from last year. What it does is, it basically erodes trust in the DNS ecosystem, which is a very bad thing. Sorry, let me move this. And that's what I was more or less talking about. So I wanna share with you some highlights from our last meeting, ICANN 83 in Prague, about 2 weeks ago, as a matter of fact. Some highlights from the GAC sessions. On the one hand, we have malicious registrations, that clearly enable phishing. And we also identified that there's a lack of uniform enforcement, against rogue registrars, And again, there are many different sources for this. This one coming from the Clean DNS, from a Clean DNS study. There's another case study that says that, registrar X, let's just say, unnamed, is linked to more than 60% of phishing domains in 2024. And we can talk about that a little bit later with more specific numbers. So I won't read the whole thing because there's obviously no time for this, but phishing scams account for a large portion of DNS abuse, with, again, some reports, indicating they comprise, all in all, 62%, more or less 62%, and this is according to AAG IT Services. and some other sources, and you have the sources right there, and you can check later. And then we have spam, malware, and botnets. Farming is almost, non-existent, but there are, at least in the DNS abuse landscape, right? And then botnets, which are basically networks of infected devices controlled by attackers and so on and so forth. And I'm taking a look at the time. So I won't get into details, but I want to concentrate on this, the DNS abuse mitigation program that ICANN has at this point, and divide it into three main pathways, so to say. The first one, is basically contributing data and expertise to fact-based discussions. And there are four things there. The first one being the DAR. DAR stands for Domain Abuse Activity Reporting, which is a system that measures domain abuse and registration activity for GTLDs and for volunteer CCTLDs, country code top-level domains, volunteer CCTLDs, and then domain metrica and ITHI, and we can talk about what ATHI is later on, and then capacity building and training. That's one track, so to say. The second track being, providing tools to the ICANN community, through the informal again standing for inferential analysis of maliciously registered domains. As you know, ICANN is it's kind of like an acronym romance, so I'm just trying to be careful to actually explain what each of the acronyms means. And then SIFT or SIFT, which is special interest forums on tech. So that's basically the second track. The third track being enforcing contractual obligations with registries and registrars. ICANN compliance enforces COs, that is contractual obligations, again, sorry for the acronym, in policies and agreements, including RA, which is registry agreement, and RAA, again, the registrar accreditation agreement. And I'm running out of time. So, and there are some potential sanctions and service level agreements being discussed. These are proposed solutions, and some brainstorming we had within the GAG. Sorry, yeah, there we go. The first one being, stricter SLAs for takedowns, 24-hour response mandate, and we're discussing that. This is not in place yet, but this is, just some brainstorming session we had in Prague 2 weeks ago. Contractual penalties, the second one, fines and suspension for repeat offenders within the ICANN contracts, that is. And then proactive screening, as was mentioned before, AI-driven pattern detection, like bulk registrations, and there's lots of information in that regard. And then finally, and I'll finish with this because we're running out of time. Absolutely, the most important point would be collaboration frameworks. As per the NetBeacons idea, reporting tools, and standardized abuse reporting. As per the Internet Society's trust initiatives, capacity building for Global South registries, and the real-time data sharing, within the GAG itself. Again, the GAG being the Governmental Advisory Committee within ICANN, and there are so many sources there. No more time for that. But anyways, thank you so much, and very happy to engage in conversations or taking questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nico. And I must say, I was in a GAC meeting back in 2007, and it's good to see that the role of GAC is now evolving, and that you are mentioning taking some stricter operational measures. That's very needed, because the registrar and registered units are a very important part of the puzzle where you actually get the domain names. So we are now moving over to a panel session, and I'm looking forward to this for many months now. So we will go through some questions to the panelists, and then we will engage with our online community. So, but I will start with my man on the right here, Rens. We've been talking about AI in many of these different sessions. So what do you think about AI and in the future of scams? Are we able to see the difference?
Difficult question. But I mentioned the research that we did in 2024, where the conclusion was that in relation to 2023, we saw about the same amount of scams. The amount of money defrauded was more or less the same. Is that reason to be happy, or I compare that with that the bad didn't get better, and I like to make a comparison with the sporting arena. Let's say, for instance, your football team that you support has lost 10-0, and the next game they lose again 10-0. I wonder what the atmosphere is in the change room. Do they say, "Oh, we did a pretty good job because it wasn't worse than last year"? I doubt that very much. With AI, I think we'll see writing of fraudulent text in SMSs, in emails. We'll see that in generating dialogues on, let's say, platforms like WhatsApp and Telegram, Facebook messaging. We see an increase in mimicking of voice, creation of images, being that a person or a product, and also the producing of voice, again, be it a product or an image. I think it's a very difficult question, Johannes, to answer, but I think we are not yet at a tipping point. I believe, but that's my personal opinion, it will get worse before it gets better.
Yes, I think you're right. Let's embrace ourselves, and then we have to tackle it. But it's getting increasingly difficult to differentiate. Well, let's talk a little bit more with the regulator when you are here on the table, Camilla. So you talked about the transition, that we will transition towards internet-based services. What are your thoughts on this transition?
Well, I don't think that it is a very easy, straightforward answer to that question. I don't think so. But I think that we must entail that internet-based services is a very broad term. It is a very complex field, both technically, legally, and culturally. But I really strongly, truly believe that the industry and the regulators share many of the same goals. We have seen it in so many ways in the past time. So I think we can base that also with the future collaboration. We all want increased digital trust. We all want increased digital inclusion, and we all want to reduce fraud. We will get some new regulatory tools, no doubt about that. But I think that the most important aspect is that we work together with the internet stakeholders and the traditional stakeholders, both from the regulator side and from the industry. I truly believe that is the answer in many ways, and we have to find out how to do it.
Thank you very much, Camilla, for those comments. I totally agree. And so we sometimes see that we ask for regulations, but many times the regulations is really there. We ask for clearer rules on privacy, but they are really there. Sometimes you just need some guidance. But let's take a look on the legal framework, and let's go a question to Rika and to UNODC. How are countries doing with the criminalization of fraud as it manifests itself in the world today?
Thank you, Johannes. Criminal law is not a magic bullet. It exists in the regulatory framework, and it has to be a complementary measure, and it certainly doesn't exclude the kind of civil and administrative measures against fraud. They coexist, so to say. Globally speaking, different countries use different terminology for fraud. Some use fraud, scams, trickery, theft, deception, swindling, misrepresentation, and so forth. So we are far away from actually having a common understanding what fraud entails in today's world. And as I mentioned earlier, fraud in these various, under these various names is not always criminalized as serious crime. But we've heard of the serious consequences of fraud, and therefore I do think that it warrants to be criminalized as serious. And this really is problematic for international cooperation, because judiciaries around the world would have to rely on each other for mutual legal assistance, extradition, law enforcement cooperation, and so forth, to be able to tackle the organized criminal groups which operate without any regard for rules and so forth. They operate transnationally, so must countries as well. So, and if we do not criminalize fraud in a somewhat uniform manner as serious crime, we don't necessarily have the legal tools for countries to actually cooperate internationally. So these international conventions are not only paper, but they constitute real tools to combat fraud. So really, criminalization matters, and we are not yet there. Thank you, Johannes.
Fantastic, good intervention. So I totally agree. It's fraud is not petty theft, as we heard from Rens Grim. The consequences of fraud can be lethal. So let's tackle this organized crime, international organized crime, as that organized international crime. So, but we always hear about privacy. We can't share data. But can we share data? And let's talk to somebody that has shared data. How did you do it, Emily? How have you been handling the data privacy issue?
Thank you very much for the question, Johannes. And I should say, in any healthy democracy, protect for fundamental rights and the rule of law are not unnice to have. They're absolutely essential. And they also give the bright lines for law enforcement to adhere to. I think often in these sort of debates, we as humans love binary. So we like, are these in opposition to each other, criminal justice and privacy? No, they're absolutely not. And in the UK, we were very fortunate that our national data protection regulator actually issued some guidance to clarify this matter, which is extremely helpful. And as Rika says, this is not, whether it's in the criminalisation area or in the data sharing area, this is not a static legal international framework. We've had the OECD principles, the second additional amendment to the protocol to the Budapest Convention, EU e-Evidence Act, and the list goes on. So, within the GSC, we have been working on the protections for privacy alongside the technical development from the outset, and I think that that's really the way to do it, and to make sure that whoever is sharing data is always in control or in charge of what happens to it, and there's no sort of really lax default settings. Privacy laws are not an annoyance. They need to be baked in. The adherence needs to be baked in from the start, so that people who are using the system can have confidence that their privacy will be respected, and that that helps to give the benchmark and the level playing field, so that people feel confident in sharing data to combat scams and fraud.
Excellent, good answer, and I concur also. In Norway, when we had the talk about the digital shields, we got input from the industry saying, okay, we need just some guidance. Please give us some guidance. And it took Ancom a couple of days to provide the guidance, and that's all it needed to get the ball started. Of course, the industry did all the work, but we made some guidance in the start, and that kicked it off. So totally agree. Okay, now Rima. Many people are being confronted daily, or perhaps not daily, but often with fake profiles on different social media channels. And you don't have to talk for everybody here, but what do you think about the challenges of fake profiles and fake content? How do we reduce this problem? You talked a little bit about it in your intervention, but do you have any supplementary comments on it?
Sure, happy to do that. So fake accounts are an incredibly important thing for us to be able to counter. Again, if we go back to the attack chain, creating that deceptive identity is one of the sort of the earlier parts that we are able to have sort of visibility in. So we have teams that are working to create technology to be able to detect this stuff at scale. And just to give you an example of the type of scale that we are looking at. In Q4 of 2024, we took down 1.4 billion fake accounts, 99.9% of those proactively, often at the point of creation before they were reported to us. So our technology is catching these fake profiles. And I should caveat here that because we're catching them very early on, we don't know the purposes for which they would be used, right? It's not necessarily all frauds and scams, but we know that fake profiles are important when it comes to frauds and scams. Now, when it comes to that 0.1% of the ones that we weren't able to catch that were reported to us, there is a challenge that comes with that. So the teams are constantly thinking, okay, how do we close that gap and get closer on it? The challenge is that as you become sort of more aggressive, then you catch innocent people within that as well. So yes, very important part of the work and something that we're focused on. I want to touch on content a little bit here as well, as you mentioned it. I don't know if anyone's come across a piece of research by Camille Francois, which talks about how you handle or ways to handle adversarial harm on the internet. She says that you can focus on actor, who is behind the activity. Then there's behavior, which is what are the behaviors that the person is doing sort of on the platform. Things like trying to reach out to numbers of people that they're not connected with, that type of behavior. And the third piece is content, which is what is it that they're actually posting on the internet. Now, all three of those components in the ABC framework are incredibly important. For frauds and scams, content is important, but it's a harder lever to pull. If you compare it to a harm like terrorism, fraud, it's not as obvious. And they deliberately, construct this to not be as obvious. And then the second thing is the content switches all the time. Fraudsters will try to promote one item and then move on to another. So they're constantly shifting. Like, that's part of their MO. Whereas it's much harder for a threat actor, a fraudster, to shift sort of their behavior or try to hide who they are. Of course, they will try to. But I think that's really important to sort of bear in mind. And that framework is something that we think about a lot when it comes to how do we tackle fraud across the ecosystem.
Thank you very much. We will get some questions afterwards from the room also. So if you have anything, just prepare yourself if you want to do that. Birgitte, yeah, you emphasized the importance of cooperation. And I know that many of the measures that Telenor are taking to combat fraud are quite costly. How can the private and public cooperation be in order to help in this regard?
I think we should reflect upon the magnitude of the problems that has been presented from all of us, and the fact that we need to work together and we need to share the burden. So maybe let's think about it in a triangle where you have the customers. They should ask for secure and safe services and be willing to pay for that. The government needs to finance parts of those costly measures, and the tech and telco companies also needs to invest. So it's in this triangle, I think we need to really divide the burden between the three.
Good, yeah, I agree. I think also the money that you put in protecting citizens is, in the long run, you get it all back with interest. So, yeah. Good intervention. Last but not least, over to Nico. You are in a key position here as the chair of the Governmental Advisory Committee, and you have a lot of data, and you have a lot of issues at your hand. But in particular to this phishing, the topic that you mentioned. Is there any, let's talk a little bit out of the box now, a possibility for data sharing, real-time data sharing, akin to the anti-phishing working group that you have mentioned, while still balancing the GDPR?
Absolutely. So, and I took the time to prepare some. It's a very short list, mainly 4 things, but important to take into account. The first one is layered access models, implementing, tiered access to who is data, where, the critical fields, like for example, anonymized email contacts, are available for legitimate purposes, like cybersecurity, of course, while protecting personal data through redaction or encryption. That's one thing. The other thing would be, a centralized accreditation. Can you hear me? Because I'm having trouble with my, developing a unified accreditation system for vetted entities, so to say, like law enforcement, cybersecurity professionals, and so on, to request non-public data, ensuring compliance with GDPR. GDPR's legitimate interest provisions. Also, a collaborative framework engaging with data protection authorities and industry stakeholders to align policies with GDPR, as as you can see in the temporary specification and the EPDP. That's expedited policy development process. Again, a long and complicated acronym coming from ICANN, but it is what it is. While preserving, again, as I said before, interests like fraud prevention, which is our main point here. And then finally, there are some technical solutions coming from ICANN. Like supporting innovations like the RDRS, that is the registration data request service, formerly known as the SSAD, to streamline secure data requests without, I would say, overburdening the registrars. So that's more or less what I can share at this point.
Thank you very much, Nico. So we will have a couple of open questions first, and you can answer when you want. The one where you just raise your hand, and then we will open the floor. But my first question, we'll talk a little bit about privacy. So I will give you a provoking question on privacy. Are the privacy rules now protecting the victims or the fraudsters? Anyone want to give that a shot? Or both?
I can give it a shot.
Thank you.
But hopefully, yeah. So I think I spoke a little bit earlier about the facial recognition technology that we deployed in order to protect people from scams relating to public figures. We deployed that pilot across the world in, I think it was October of last year, basically. And one of the challenges were that we were just unable to deploy it within sort of Europe and the UK at that particular time because we were, navigating with the regulator and putting all those pieces into place to ensure that that they were sort of comfortable with this technology. So what I would say there is that these protections were designed for the right reasons and the right sort of principles behind them. But I think what needs to be sort of added to them is understanding sort of the adversarial landscape, especially when it comes to fraudsters as well, to enable us to deploy things at the speed of which we need to, because these are some of the fastest actors out there. And so we need to make sure that we're able to deploy things in the right way at the speed of which we need to.
Thank you. Good comment. Good comment. Rika?
Yes, I totally agree. And indeed, privacy laws were actually put in place to also prevent fraud. So the intention, as Rima said, was a good one. But it's the implementation of those laws that leaves some room for improvement. Privacy, the right to privacy is not an absolute right in international human rights law. It is a qualified right. So there are certain conditions, and if those conditions are fulfilled, it can be compromised. the right to privacy. And it can be compromised for certain good reasons, legitimate aim, and that would be, for example, public order, public safety, national security. And when we look at the scale of fraud, I do think that the legitimate aim is there. So indeed, it is not an absolute but a qualified right. But in addition to that legitimate aim, it also has to be prescribed by clear and accessible law. So again, for legislators, some work to do, serve this legitimate aim, and it has to be necessary and proportionate. And then you are in compliance with the international human rights framework.
Thank you. Yeah, Emily.
Well, I think Rima and Rika have both made excellent points, which I won't repeat. I think that where I would come in on this is just reflecting on the transatlantic tensions around data sharing, between very close allies, all democracies, all subject to the rule of law. And, Nico, I had the misfortune to be on the EPDP, and the expedited bit was certainly not really very apparent in this multi-year process. But actually, rather than blaming ourselves, I think we reflect on how difficult it is, and that WHO is a microcosm of wider difficulties of sharing data. But Rika, you talked about the importance of laws being accessible and also understandable. There was a story of a guy going around an international law conference wearing a T-shirt saying only God is GDPR compliant. And I think, if we reflect on how difficult it is to comply, and particularly given the extraterritorial nature for US companies, which are very, very risk averse because they come in a much more litigious society and are not really used to the aspirational quality of many European laws. I think this is a moment of reflection to think, well, how do we do it better? The fundamental rights need to be protected, and legitimate people also need to be protected from intrusion, but we can do better.
Thank you for those words. I totally agree. Let's move on now to, we will take one question from the floor, and then we will get the online community on for the next one, and then we will go back and forth. So we have the first question here. So when you present your question, just say who you are or where you come from, and then the question. Thank you.
Hi. Hello.
Oh, we have two here. So you first in the front.
Hi. Thank you. Andrew Campling. I'm a trustee of the Internet Watch Foundation. We've heard why signal is important by effectively everyone in the panel, whether it's to identify criminals, to aid enforcement, or to protect end users. And building on Emily's comments about the forced binary choice between privacy and security, and the weaponization of, as Rika quite rightly said, the qualified right of privacy, we're seeing some significant unintended consequences. For example, current and planned changes to internet standards are removing signal, which will make those consumer protections that the Norwegians are enjoying ineffective. Because you'll lose the signal that you need for that, and make it far harder to identify criminals. Or to the ICANN example, the lack of proper know your customer processes mean that we're aiding the criminals that undertake phishing, because we've got no idea who registered the domains. So registers and registrars are hiding behind those privacy protections. So how do we get people like on this panel more involved in actually stopping those harms, those unintended harms, by engaging in internet standards?
Is that a question to Nico on Know Your Customer, perhaps?
Let's try. Whoever.
Thank you very much for a good question.
Thank you for the question. Even though I'm not involved in any kind of commercial activity, within ICANN, ICANN is certainly taking steps in that regard. And I can mention, a stricter registration data accuracy enforcement. Like, for example, registrars now must verify and update inaccurate WHOIS data within 7 days of changes, or face suspension of domains on the one hand. Broadly speaking, ICANN's accuracy reporting system, the ARS, has historically monitored compliance though I must recognize it was paused after GDPR. But on the other hand, as of right now, registrants are obligated to maintain accurate contact details, to investigate complaints within 15 days, which is good progress, as compared to, well, not an ideal situation, not the best solution, but ICANN is doing,
Good. We are in.
Whatever. Yeah.
I'm just looking at the time here. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. And we can connect the dot from GSE to ICANN, and then you will get a very good picture. I think we will get the online community up now. Frode, are you there? I feel like it's a Melody Grand Prix here. Frode Sørensen's online moderator. So we will get him up on the screen.
Thank you, Johannes.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Many thanks for the presentations from the panelists and for the interesting discussion. So far, there is no question in the chat, but we encourage people to ask questions in the chat, which can be read aloud afterwards. So I just hand back to you, Johannes, to take more questions in the room.
Good. So you are in contact with the producer, and then she will give him a sign if there will be. But that doesn't matter because we have 4 people here, 3 people waiting in line.
Good.
So let's take this one first.
No, I was on.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
So Rens brought up a issue.
You have to say your name first and where you're from.
Yeah. Shiva Bisesa, Trinidad and Tobago. Rens brought up the issue of financial sextortion, and this is something I had personal experience with earlier this year. Where I knew the victim and the victim took his life. And as Rima showed, the engagement aspect is conducted on platforms. In this case, it was WhatsApp. My question is for the Global South, for developing nations. How can we increase awareness? What is the responsibility of platforms to increase awareness on these scams? And further, law enforcement is not as equipped as developed states within the developing world. How can we get law enforcement up to date? And if there is if there's no mechanism to report these things to law enforcement, how can we report directly to the platforms?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Very good question. I will to Rens.
Thank you for your question, and sorry to hear about your loss. It is a difficult area. Especially in the sextortion that I was talking about. Because in the country of origin, the people behind these scams are seen as heroes. And even the nation is discouraging people to go to school and just go scamming. So, but to answer your question, I think is the whole purpose of the stakeholder participation, getting into touch with local enforcement agencies and propagate that cooperation. It is a difficult story because, as it is said here early on the panel, there's no strict criminal prosecution possible. So if it happens in country A and the extortionist is in country B, it's extremely difficult to get that person in country B to be prosecuted. And it's a difficult, we're not there yet, but I believe that encouraging countries, nations, governments to also actively go after the people within their country who are propagating and who are actually committing these crimes, that is the first step forward. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah.
I can also take some of that question, and I'm firstly so sorry for your personal loss. I think in terms of the question you asked around sort of raising awareness and what we can do there, I think there's a couple of pieces there, right? So you've got sort of campaigns that we can work sort of together on. I think that's the working together piece is really important because what we often see is fragmented sort of awareness campaigns and people and young people especially being bombarded with so many different messages that actually bringing those together is incredibly important. And so that's something that we look to do with governments and those types of entities. The next is sort of interventions and building products in a way that is safe, creates safe environments. So separating, for example, messages that come from people that you're not connected with, and putting in sort of the guardrails there. On the piece on law enforcement, I think it's something that we try to do at Meta is work with law enforcement. So we have people focused specifically on outreach to help law enforcement identify, what information that they can request, how they can request it, and how they can actually use that information to be able to investigate and enforce there. And then the piece on reporting is also particularly sort of important. One of the challenges we have in that type of scam, but also sort of other scams that might end up on websites and other sort of platforms, is that we don't necessarily have the context that we need to be able to enforce. And so reporting through the platform or through sort of the law enforcement channels that are available is important for us to then be able to look back and be able to enforce on that particular actor.
Thank you very much, Rika, and then Emily. And we have to close down in some, but it's an important question, so we need to reflect on it.
Yeah, thank you for that important question and example as well. At UN, UNODC, we have these intergovernmental processes, which we've done a couple of on fraud, and there's an increasing awareness of the seriousness of fraud as such, and including naturally also sexual extortion. Tragic example. We also carry out technical assistance activities, and they kind of range from prevention to protection of victims and witnesses, pursuing the criminals, the organized criminal groups behind it, and also promoting that cooperation. So I hope in the years to come there is an increased awareness, but clearly we still have a lot of work ahead of us.
Emily?
Yeah, very briefly, Shiva, very sorry to hear of your loss. I just wanted to address another aspect of getting law enforcement up to date, which is the collaboration with industry. Global South and also other countries are suffering from lack of resources in law enforcement and are simply not able to follow up all of the potential leads. And I think industry has a part to play in it. I think this also goes to the point that Birgitta made about burden sharing, and this is something that we're doing within the Global Signal Exchange with pilots between law enforcement and industry to see to what extent can industry sort of take some of the burden from law enforcement, so enabling them to do what only law enforcement can do, which is the pursue element. But there's an awful lot of prevent and a lot of following up that industry can do in that.
Thank you very much all for those comments to that. And I'm very sorry that we don't have time for more questions, but we are here, so you can approach us after this session. I would like to thank everybody for your contributions. I would like to thank the panelists. We will never get rid of fraud. It will always be there, but we can tackle it one piece at a time. We can eat the elephant one piece at a time. I would like to thank Frode for his online moderator, and also the IGF team for having this session on these important topics. I hope this is not the end of anything. This is the start of anything. We'll have to be more operational. We have to get action done, share data, share guidance, and we have to tackle this fraud because it's serious, it's lethal. So we have to protect the global citizens toward this against this international crime. So thank you very much, everybody, for your participation and your presence.
Workshop 2. 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 Workshop 2.